too.
Everything we thought we knew about the ending of Outlander might be completely wrong, because episode 9 doesn't just push the story forward. It quietly sets up a twist that could change Jamie's fate forever. The tension in episode 9 builds from the very first moment, and it all comes down to one thing: time is running out. On one side, the Battle of King's Mountain is getting closer with every passing second. On the other side, Lord John Grey is missing, and the truth behind his disappearance is far worse than anyone expected. This isn't just a rescue situation anymore. It's personal, and for Jamie, it's about loyalty, honor, and a debt that can't be ignored. What makes this episode so powerful is how it places Jamie Fraser in an impossible position. He knows the battle ahead could decide everything, not just for him, but for everyone at Fraser's Ridge. Yet at the same time, leaving Lord John behind is not an option. Their history runs too deep. There's respect there, and more importantly, trust that has been tested again and again. Walking away now would mean betraying that bond. At the same time, William Ransom is going through his own internal conflict. His anger hasn't fully disappeared, but something is shifting. For the first time, he starts to see the bigger picture. He realizes that holding on to resentment won't change the truth about who Jamie is or what he has done for him. This episode slowly breaks down that wall between them, not with dramatic speeches, but through quiet realization. And that makes it feel real. Meanwhile, Claire Fraser senses that something isn't right. She has seen enough war, enough loss, to recognize when events are starting to spiral out of control. Her attempts to stop Jamie from going into battle don't come from fear alone. They come from knowledge. She knows how history works, and she knows how fragile life can be when time itself is involved. But convincing Jamie is never easy, especially when his mind is already made up. And then there's the betrayal that changes everything. Lord John Grey didn't just get captured, he was deceived. The emotional weight of that betrayal adds a darker layer to the story. It's not just about survival anymore. It's about heartbreak, about trusting the wrong person and paying the price for it. This moment reshapes how we see his character. Strong, composed, always in control, and yet vulnerable in a way we rarely get to see. As the episode moves forward, the idea of a rescue mission starts to take shape. And this is where things become even more interesting. Because if Jamie decides to go after Lord John, it won't just be a side mission. It will directly affect the outcome of the battle. Every decision now has consequences. Every delay could mean losing the war. But at the same time, rushing into battle without resolving this could lead to something even worse. What makes this situation even more intense is the presence of figures like Benjamin Cleveland, who represent the unstoppable force of war. He pushes forward, focused only on the bigger picture, with little regard for personal struggles. For him, the battle is everything. For Jamie, it's only part of the story. And that difference creates a silent conflict that keeps building throughout the episode. At its core, episode 9 is not just about action. It's about choices. Difficult, painful choices where there is no perfect outcome. Save a friend or fight a war. Follow history or try to change it. Trust fate or challenge it. And just when it feels like things couldn't get more complicated, the episode begins to hint at something deeper, something connected to time itself. Small moments, almost easy to miss, start to suggest that the rules we've been following might not be as fixed as we thought. And if that's true, then the ending of this story might not be as predictable as it seems. As episode 9 continues, the pressure doesn't ease, it tightens. Every storyline starts moving faster, and the space for mistakes disappears. What makes this part of the episode stand out is how it slowly blends emotion with uncertainty, especially when it comes to the idea that fate might not be fixed after all. The rescue mission for Lord John Grey begins to feel inevitable. Once Jamie Fraser learns the truth, there's no hesitation left. This is no longer about strategy or timing. It's about doing what he believes is right. And that decision alone starts to shift everything. Because the moment Jamie steps away from the path that history expects him to follow, the future becomes uncertain. What makes this even more intense is the involvement of William Ransom. This is where his character truly evolves. Instead of reacting with anger, he begins to act with purpose. There's a quiet understanding forming between him and Jamie, something unspoken but powerful. They may not fully agree, and the past hasn't been erased, but for the first time, they are moving in the same direction. And that changes the energy of every scene they share. At the same time, Claire Fraser finds herself facing a different kind of fear. It's not just about losing Jamie in battle anymore, it's about losing him in a way she cannot undo. She has always relied on her knowledge of time, on the belief that certain events are meant to happen. But now, even that certainty feels fragile. There are signs, small, unsettling signs, that something is shifting. One of those signs comes through the idea of repayment. The appearance and influence of Mr. Whittaker starts to feel more significant than it first seemed. What once looked like a simple act of gratitude now carries deeper meaning. Claire once crossed a line by saving a life in a way that challenged the natural flow of time. And now, it feels like time itself might be responding. This is where the episode introduces a quiet but powerful question. What if the future isn't written in stone? What if the ending that everyone fears can actually be changed? That possibility becomes even more real when we consider the outcome of the battle ahead. The Battle of Kings Mountain has always been seen as a turning point, a moment that history has already defined. But if Jamie receives help he wasn't supposed to have, if certain people survive who were never meant to, then the entire timeline could shift. And that's where the tension reaches a new level. Because now there are two paths forming. In one path, everything follows the expected course. Jamie fights, sacrifices are made, and history repeats itself. But in the other path, something changes. A decision, a rescue, a moment of intervention, and suddenly, the ending is no longer guaranteed. What makes this even more emotional is the way the episode starts to prepare us for loss. There are subtle hints, moments that feel like quiet goodbyes, even when no one says it out loud. It creates a sense that something major is coming, something that will affect every character we've followed for so long. And then comes the most unexpected layer of all, the return of familiar faces. Names like Dougal Mackenzie, Gillis Duncan, and Murtaugh Fraser begin to surface again. Not in a simple or obvious way, but in a way that feels deeply connected to memory, to legacy, and possibly to something beyond life itself. If this is leading where it seems to be leading, then episode 9 might not just be setting up a battle. It might be setting up a moment where Jamie stands between life and death, revisiting the people who shaped him, the choices that defined him, and the love that carried him through everything. And if that happens, then the emotional weight of the story is about to reach its peak. Because this isn't just about how the story ends anymore. It's about whether the ending can be changed at all. As episode 9 moves toward its final moments, everything begins to connect in a way that feels both inevitable and completely unpredictable. The story is no longer just about war, rescue, or survival. It becomes about time, legacy, and the possibility that some endings can be rewritten. The emotional core of this episode starts to revolve around Jamie Fraser and the path that lies ahead of him. Whether he goes into battle after the rescue or is pulled into it by circumstance, one thing becomes clear. He is walking toward a moment that will define everything. The tension here is not just about whether he will survive, but how that survival, or even his death, will shape the future. And this is where the story takes a deeper turn. Because if Jamie does fall during the Battle of Kings Mountain, it may not be the end. The episode strongly hints at the idea that death, in this world, is not always final. With Claire Fraser by his side, and the mysterious presence of forces like the blue light that has already challenged the natural order, there is a real possibility that something impossible could happen again. This isn't presented in an obvious way. Instead, it builds slowly through emotion and memory. If Jamie reaches the edge between life and death, we may see him confronted by the people who shaped his journey, faces from his past, moments that defined who he became. Characters like Dougal Mackenzie, Murtaugh Fraser, and Gillis Duncan are not just returning for nostalgia, they represent unfinished emotions, choices, and consequences. These encounters, if they happen, would not just be emotional, they would be meaningful. Each one could reflect a different part of Jamie's life: loyalty, sacrifice, love, regret. And standing in the middle of all of that would be the question that has followed this entire season. Does he let go, or does he fight to come back? At the same time, another layer of the story begins to unfold through the idea of time travel. The hints around gemstones and the ability to move through time are no longer in the background. They start to feel central to how this story might end. The presence of a new potential traveler changes the stakes completely. Because if someone inexperienced uses that power without guidance, the consequences could go far beyond a single timeline. This is where the connection to Outlander, Blood of My Blood, starts to feel real. Instead of a simple crossover, the episode suggests something more organic. A collision of timelines. If new characters from another story enter this timeline by mistake, or by fate, it could create a bridge between the two shows in a way that feels natural. Not forced, not sudden, but built through the same rules that have always guided this world. Imagine a moment where past and present intersect, where characters who don't fully understand time travel find themselves in a place they were never meant to be. And in that confusion, they become part of something much bigger than their own story. Back in the present timeline, the emotional weight continues to build. William Ransom is no longer the same person we saw at the beginning. His journey through anger, confusion, and acceptance reaches a turning point here. If Jamie's life is truly at risk, William may be forced to confront his feelings completely. Not as a soldier, not as someone trying to prove something, but as a son. That realization alone could become one of the most powerful moments in the entire series. And as the episode closes, it doesn't give clear answers. Instead, it leaves us with possibilities. A battle that could end in victory, or devastating loss. A love story that could find a miraculous second chance, or a final goodbye. A timeline that might stay intact, or change forever. What makes episode 9 so impactful is that it doesn't rely on shock alone. It builds its suspense through emotion, through choices, and through the constant feeling that something bigger is happening beneath the surface. And as we move closer to the finale of Outlander, one question becomes impossible to ignore. Is this story about to end the way it was always meant to, or are we about to witness something no one saw coming?